It's really a wonderful opportunity for all of us. I'm Bob Sutter from George Washington University, and I'm very grateful to be the chair of this panel. I think we're off to an excellent start. We really have had a wonderful discussion. And this panel is tasked with looking at issues dealing with economics, international institutions, and transnational issues. So maybe we won't be so much into the security dilemma and securitizing all the issues that we've been dealing with this morning, but in a way, maybe we will. And so I think we have a number of questions. And keep in mind that prior to this, in preparation for this very wonderful meeting, we've worked out a series of questions with our Chinese guests, and so they're anticipating these questions to be asked in various ways, and we've covered a lot of them. But there are so many to cover, so I'm not sure we'll be able to do many of these things. So I'm going to try to generalize a little bit on how to deal with issues. And when we move into this area, where we're not looking at hard security issues, we're looking more at governance and economics and institutions and transnational questions, I'm sure that each of you has some ideas that you'd like to share with our group in the interest of time. In other words, that we don't have a lot of time, but if you have I'm going to ask you in the beginning of our session to spend a minute or two, now not a lot, but a minute or two, to make sure that some of the ideas that you have, that you come to the meeting with, get shared with the group. And I'm going to do that in the context of economics. What we find in the United States is that we just had an election, and our economy isn't very good, but we still reelected the president who is presided over these poor economic conditions. And we look abroad, and we always think of China as growing very rapidly and quickly, but there's an awful lot of discussion now that the economy in China is not doing very well. And this is going to have an effect, if this is true, it's going to have a very serious effect on the ability of China to do a variety of things in world affairs from a security point of view and from an economic point of view and politically. And so I really would like to get a sense of where our group feels, what they feel about the growth of the Chinese economy. What is the outlook, or what is your outlook on this? And what effect is this having about the debates in China over foreign affairs, security issues, and international economics? And Vice President Zhu, I wonder if you'd like to start us off with on that issue.
Okay, I'm not an economist, as you all know. That I have been doing research on international affairs, but. Since this session will talk about the economy and also China's relationship with the international economic system, I just want to say two things. One, that I personally optimistic about China's economy, especially when your projection, you have projection of another 10 years that China, I think, will maintain 7 or at least 7.5% of increase of its economic development. I gave you several reasons. One is that China is now in a middle process of ongoing industrialization and urbanization. Last year, China's urbanization rate for the first time exceeded 50%, exactly 53.1%. And in recent years, urbanization rate increased 1 percentage point each year, means more than 10 million rural residents will move to cities to become city developers. And that will boost a great demand of the, internal consumptions. This is one reason. The second reason that China is still in the process of upgrading industries and expanding of sectoral service sectors for its large share in our economy, which also provide a strong industrial support for larger economic domestic demand and more employment. Third reason, I would like to say that we are now undergoing a great change in social field, that the government is doing social projects as reform of the distribution of wealth, employment support, social housing, and also full coverage of healthcare and large-scale poverty reduction, and so on, and so many such kind of things. And these major projects are important to people's income, and China's economic growth will, and also very much important for China's expanding consumptions and domestic demand. Some people have a pessimistic view when they look at China's economy, but the three because of these three reasons that I think in the future we still can maintain a fast development. Finally, I think that I gave you another reason that China's economy will develop fast, because that we still have a lot of alternatives to manage our situation. For example, China's current accumulation of a Chinese governmental debt, including central and local government, accounts only about 40% of China's GDP, and a budget deficit less than 2% of GDP. So there's a lot of ammunition for Chinese government to manage our economy. So in a word, because of industrialization, urbanization, modernization of agriculture, and also service sectors, social projects, and all these things will encourage, enhance Chinese people's livelihoods, and will improve Chinese people's income, and which will do a lot to promote or to enhance or to lift the Chinese domestic consumption, which will be helpful for China's restructuring our economy. So I'm quite confident in our future, especially in economic terms.
Excellent. And General Zhu, how about you, and the implications for the military in particular?
First of all, I would like to add a few points to Professor Zhu's statement. I can give you some figures. I am very confident over China's economy in the future 30 years or so. First, the investment, the Chinese economy development will continue to be investment-driven or oriented, because the year before last year, National Defense University sponsored a seminar on war readiness transportation war readiness. Some of the governors of the provinces and the ministers were invited to this seminar, and because it was run by my department, so I invited the three guys to give us the introduction of the 20-year plan for their development. One is the Deputy Minister of Transportation. Second is the Deputy Minister of Railway. And the third is the Deputy Director of the CAAC. According to their introduction, I think the investment will be huge. For example, nowadays China has a total length of highway of about 3.51 million kilometers in length. And 20 years later, this length will reach about 5.5 million kilometers of length, and much of them will be expressway. And according to the railway station, nowadays we have about 110,000 kilometers of railways, and by the year 2030, it will be expanded to 250,000 kilometers of railway. Now, with regard to the aviation, I think that development will be terrible, because in the 12th five-year plan, China will increase about over 90 airfields. And according to an estimate from the United States, we have 1,805 aircraft with a sitting capacity over 100 passengers. But 5 years later, it will reach 4,500. So according to these figures, you will see how much Chinese will invest, including the urbanization. I think this investment will be huge. I still remember a couple of years ago, I discussed with a high school student from the United States. And this girl is a daughter of my classmate. He told me, I asked her what kind of facilities they have. She told me they have a 9-story library. They have more than 10 basketball courts and indoor swimming rooms, outdoor swimming rooms. So this sort of facilities in high school in the United States can rarely be found in the universities. So what does that mean? That means the infrastructure needs big investment. So future economic development will be investment driven. I think this is one. Secondly, I believe, besides what Professor Zhu mentioned, is the mode of consumption. It is changing. The people at my age usually deposit the money into the bank, and they do not want to live by bearing any debt. But our younger generation is different. Younger generation, like my daughter, a couple of years later, after graduation, they buy a big house, and they pay mortgage. And if they buy clothes of about 500, they even want to pay mortgage. That's the change of perception. That's change of mode of the consumption. So this sort of changes will lead to the increase of internal consumption. So I hope maybe some guys present here have got some connections with the business sectors. Please encourage the business sectors go to China to invest. There is a huge opportunity for you to make bigger profit. Thank you.
Professor Shen, do you share this optimistic view about the Chinese economic outlook?
Well, I'm impressed by General Zhu's. Well, I just discovered his additional talents talking about investment. I have a mix, some optimism and some worry. The year 2000 witnessed China's GDP at 1.07 trillion US dollar. Last year, 7.3. And this year, probably around 8 trillion US dollar. So in 12 years, China will do what it expects to do from 2000 to 2020, quadrupling from 1 to 4 trillion. So we are doing 8 trillion. So that's basically 3 decades work. So by this year, we have met the dream of 2030, even not 2020. What this has created? First, some image of China, which is not a peace-loving country anymore, or probably it was never a peace-loving country. So a number of countries would perceive China as another monster. It has a big idea, big dream, and big capacity. So therefore, U.S. need to rebalance. Second, new Party Secretary General Xi Jinping mentioned yesterday, China's time, when I checking my hotel after 11 p.m. last night, I turned to CCTV. That's the new phenomenon. American Washington-based hotel has CCTV 4. Even General Zhu says, don't pay too much attention to those military personnel who spoke at CCTV 4. So I turned to it, and I saw that Mr. Xi mentioned clearly that he has a mandate to rid corruption. I'm very encouraged. He was very objective to talk about food security and political security in the dimension of ridding corruption. So the big money without adequate political reform would make people more able to touch it without suitable accountability. So that's the implication. That erodes the legitimacy and political security. I have no problem with one-party system as long as it would serve the people. Serving people means that you get what you should get legitimately, not more than what you should get. Like Bo Xilai, in one of the official story, he took 20 million Chinese yuan from one source. That was not legitimate. But in the next decade, China is not going to develop at that speed. Every 4 years, double. 12 years, triple. It's not going to happen. Not a triple, 3 doubling. That's 8 times increase. If we can do 7.2 per annum for a decade, that's a doubling in 10 years. And presumably, we could do more than this, more than 7.2 in the next decade. So I would assume that by 2020, we may double by this year's standard, basically $16 trillion US, which is bigger than what the US was last year, which was 15.07 trillion US. Of course, the US would continue to grow at 2%, around 2% a year, measuring against a bigger entity, 15 trillion. So US would be even bigger. But China would quickly catch up with the US. That would create lots of psychological problems. Would the US accept another superpower? And China would feel that it's time for US to end the weapon sale. So we would push this as we did 2 years ago. We say, if we don't end, we are going to punish you. And we did not honor our promise, even though the foreign ministry said, this time it's real. 这是真的. But so by 2020, when we have 16 US 20, we will say again, this is really real. So this kind of what happened because we think we have power, and it's legitimate. But US considers that, given your political background, US does not think that you have the right to coerce some people in Taiwan or coerce other people. And even you have the power, you should not use the power. And I think given our slower development, the actual additional creation of each year against a bigger entity around $10 trillion US is still significant. So this would add to some very complicated situation that China-US could more cooperate because we need more energy. Without increasing our energy efficiency significantly in the next decade, with the possibility US would be energy sufficient by the end of next decade. So China would more depend upon the Middle East than whether China would replace the US to patrol the region to make it stable for China's own sake and for the regional stability. If China would not do and the US is doing less, therefore the world will be more turbulent. If China would do, how US would accept that the rising, not only the aspiring power, but the rising superpower would replace America. These are all complicated. And China's development growth is slower, but it is reforming to develop other value-added industry. For instance, now we have the Boeing, we have the Airbus, but the targeted year is 2017 for China's commercial airline to take off. So in merely 5 years, we are going to have ABC. So China is going to sell lots of Chinese intercontinental commercial airplane, which would be great for China's economic development, but it would be harder for US to see such a challenge, technological progress of China. So China considers that I have legitimate need to make the leap, but the US would have the legitimate fear that American age, technological age, would be less imminent in 10 years. So in summary, I would feel that all this would add to a complicated situation. Our two countries could cooperate much more and appreciate much more. China would appreciate the current US concern to stabilize the Middle East. And it's also possible that we may not deal with our relationship in a sensible way. Therefore, we pretend to have lots of confrontation, and we could not manage such difficulty, which should be dealt with sensibility.
Excellent. Yeah, please, Professor.
I would like to add one point. So when we are talking about the optimism about the Chinese economic future, I don't want you to be scared by the large scale of the Chinese economy, because you have to remember that China is still a developing country, even though that this identity is questioned by many Western scholars, not only from the United States, but also from the European continent. Also, some African scholars also question that China being a developing country. But I like to say that China has double faces. When you go to Beijing and Shanghai, China is very much developed. But if you go to the countryside and the western part of China, China is still very much lagged behind. I gave you some figures. One figure is that China still has 128 million of Chinese people who have a life of $1 a day, and this is a large number of people that they need to have their livelihood to be improved, and also that in another 10 years we will have 400 million of Chinese rural residents will move to cities. This is a big project for the government to manage. And I just mentioned that China is becoming an aging society, and a lot of work to do for this taking care of the old people. And finally, I want to say that each year Chinese government has to provide at least 20 million jobs for immigrant workers, so for the graduates. And these numbers big numbers, and the Chinese are facing a lot of challenges ahead. So over economic development, especially maintaining 7% of increase, is very much necessary to do this.
Excellent. Thank you very much. As we're looking at the implications of China's substantial economic growth, the issues of energy security, energy efficiency, and environmental issues are all intertwined together. And I'm going to just adjust the order slightly. I'm going to start with General Chu on this one. On the issue of energy security and energy efficiency and environmental issues, do you have some perspectives on these issues? I mean, there's an awful lot of discussion of the military role in energy security, for example, and Professor Chen talked about the Middle East being so important for China's supplies, and China's use of energy is growing by leaps and bounds. And so I just wondered if you had some perspectives on that.
Yeah, first of all, China is becoming increasingly dependent on the energy imported from the outside, especially the oil and gas. Secondly, I believe that China will increase its own capacity in producing its gas and oil. And China is an exporting country to some extent in coal, but China is also importing coal. But I think energy is a problem. But nowadays, I don't think it's a big problem. And I don't think energy will be a very, very serious security challenge, not to mention threat to China's development. Because we have enough access to international energy, like the petrol in Middle East, in Africa. And we are increasing our capacity in exploring the oil. And I think China is a breakthrough at the shale gas. In the not long future, I think China can explore its own shale gas like the United States, because the shale gas deposit in China is very big and it's very huge, and it can support China for many years. Another point is the fact that because in the past years, China's development has been mainly relied on the exploration of coal. Therefore, it has produced a very, very negative impact on the environment. Nowadays, Chinese government are attaching great importance to the protection of the environment. And I think the new government will continue to do that. And the Chinese government has worked out very, very strict regulations and stipulations on the exploration of the new resources. So I believe that the environment in China will continue to be improved instead of being deteriorated. Of course, the Chinese military, even though we are depending heavily on the oil with the improvement, with the mechanization of the military, but I believe that is quite limited, because in China, those in the military, the hardwares will also be taken into consideration of these sort of factors of oil consumption, not like the United States, like hammer, which is a burner for oil. But Chinese you can hardly find this sort of vehicles in China. So we are trying our efforts to make full use of those hammer. You know that? That's very popular in China, especially among young people. Yeah. So I don't think security, the energy security, is a very serious challenge for China. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Professor Shen, I'd like to ask you a second on this one.
Largely, I agree with General Zhu that we can manage accessing to energy. I think there is a bigger issue if we can improve our energy efficiency. That would do a lot of good to China and to the world. As our total GDP is a quarter more than that of Japan last year, but our total energy consumption is multiple times more. 4 times or even more. Of course, we have 11 times people as much as Japan. So we need to spend more. But to spend 4 or 5 times as big as Japan is not great. Need to improve. That would give China another big chance to lift its industry. Education, making law, new construction, and implementing the new law to save energy, as well as to develop the technology and to do the engineering work. That would make China to spend lots of money for a better China, a cleaner, a more energy efficient China. And if we can even save 20% of energy, than what we currently use, that's the entirety of Japan's total energy spending. And that would make a big contribution to the international community and to China's own energy security. So this is a big issue that I always want to mention and to promote. Otherwise, even though we can access to energy, but we have to work with Iran, and 7 to 9% of China's energy comes from Iran. At a time when Iran has a very controversial nuclear program, that energy relationship, so legitimate, compromise our effort to have international collaboration in offsetting Iran's controversial nuclear development. And that limits the freedom of China's foreign policy conducting. And we work with Sudan and some other volatile places, which complicate China's foreign policy idealism. When we have our policy to help us stabilize the region, when we do lots of business of this and give our money to the regime, that makes the regime benefit to probably not make the region more stable. So how to benefit both the regime and also its people through our more moral and idealistic foreign policy is an issue, is a challenge. We used to have very idealistic foreign policy. For instance, when South Africa was having its apartheid, hurting its majority people by the minority people, unlike the U.S. The U.S. used to have in 1960s, until that time, the majority people hurting the minority people. But China always supported them, both effort, Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and Mandela, to support them for their quest for equal rights. So we intervened. We have this humanitarian, human rights attached condition for our foreign policy conducting with the U.S. before we established a diplomatic relationship, and with South Africa. And they remember us. Now we do not attach condition. For a long time we say we did not attach. No, we attached moral condition. If you guys do not respect human rights, we don't do business, economic business with you. Now we do business with everybody. We don't care if what kind of human rights condition you have. So I would point that we used to have great performance, more moral, but also that was also controversial when we export revolution to Indonesia. That what constitute intervention, unwarranted intervention. But our intervention into Martin Luther King's demand is simply great. So how in the future we would less depend upon others because of resource need to improve our foreign policy, which has a moral dimension, remains a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Professor Zhu, do you have some remarks on energy security and environmental issues?
Okay, just following the two panelists' ideas on this issue, I think the energy security issue is very much related to climate change. Let me say something in the perspective of a Chinese government dealing with the climate change issue. I think, first of all, I think the Chinese government sets great store by the issue of climate change. We are very serious. We have very serious perceptions of climate change, especially its consequences on China's environmental protections. And secondly, I want to say that China takes very serious policy initiatives and actions to deal with the climate change issue. For example, in year 2006, China set forth the compulsive goal of reducing its per unit GDP energy consumption in 2010 by 20% from that of year 2005. And also in year 2007, China became the first developing country to formulate and implement a national program for to address climate change. And several years ago, it is year 2009, China put forward the goal of action to reduce the per unit GDP greenhouse gas emission in 2020 by 40 to 45% as compared to that of year 2005. And last year, we began our 12th five-year plan for national economic and social development. That 12 five-year plan established the policy orientation of promoting green and low carbon development. So this year, at the 8th National Congress of the CPC, and also we set a goal of building a beautiful China. They call beautiful China. I think this is quite an interesting concept, but eco-friendly society. This is being set as a goal for us to combat environmental deterioration and to build an eco-friendly society. This is what Chinese dream. When you go to Beijing, you know that what badly the air that we every day breathe. So this is what we are determined to do.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to now move to Professor Shun. I'll start with him at this time, and it changed the topic a little bit. This morning's the earlier panel. We talked about the Chinese people think China's posture, the foreign ministry's decided posture is too soft, and they run across this opposition at various times. And why do the people of China feel that way? I mean, what is it? How do they think about China? Do they have an image of China as you mentioned in your previous remarks, an idealism that was in China's views in the past and it's not there now? What is it that makes Chinese people think that their policy is too soft?
Not all people's view might be correct. But oftentimes they are correct. People sharply, correctly observe some phenomenon which makes them hard to accept. For instance, we want to have a harmonious, peaceful relationship with the Philippines, but then the government did not take action to protect our fishermen working in the area in Huangyan Island. That discouraged the fishermen to go there, as otherwise they could be detained or arrested. They have to pay a fine, and they don't want to do this. Until lately, when fishermen on two boats were arrested But another boat escaped and returned, and they told this to Guangzhou Daily. So government newspaper would not address this issue. It's not a local business, it's a foreign military. But the journalist put this on his personal microblog, what we call Weibo. So that made people exciting. Look, our government is not protecting our people in the area which we, for ages, for centuries, we thought that belonged to China. And the Philippine government for ages has not listed this area as their territory. So that microblog, social media event has made people to believe the government is too soft. Yes, we can have peace, but peace has to be based on our dignity, defending our territory. You have fundamental peace. When you don't do the righteous things to protect our people, you are not going to have respect from either the Filipino side and the Chinese ordinary people, and you are not going to have peace. That's item one. Item two, when the government negotiated with Russia to abandon what we call the Tsar aggressively took Chinese island 1.8 million square meters since 1860. So we always thought they took it unfairly. But then, without consulting people, without having a public referendum, 10 years ago, government signed an agreement with Russia, which is not a mutual assistance agreement, but agreement for friendly cooperation. Article 6 of it saying that both sides have declared to have no territorial dispute claim over others' land, which means from that day on, Chinese side officially abandoned our territorial claim over the land that was unfairly taken by Russian Tsars at that time, for good. It's fine, but this is Chinese land. Chinese people need to have a say. You have to have a national debate to educate us. It's time for us to relinquish our claim for fundamental goods of China. So without respecting people and calling the country as a People's Republic is questionable. So I think people have all this complaint, including myself. I would support the government and I would help the government to do the propaganda. Why we need to abandon? They were never a part of China in the first place. And aggressor invading us took this island, and we took them for granted. Then other aggressor took this island. So if you read history in this holistical view, I would not be hurt by abandoning it and respecting reality. But without educating people, you only plant a time bomb for people to think we are too soft. Mm-hmm. I don't think we are too soft. Our ancestors should never be greedy in taking the land, and a succeeding government should never be greedy in inheriting, in taking them, continuing this. But once we lost, take it easy. But then you cannot apply this to Taiwan, to Tibet. So therefore, it's very difficult to apply this logic to every land we have lost, or we are facing a threat to have secession. So I think there is some reasoning and government need to address. Then government has been addressing very forcefully that would reinforce the image that China is rising, China is hostile, China is hurting the small neighbor, taking the land so distant from China. So this is the new image. So I think the previous effort for peaceful relationship with our neighbor may have generated current problem. But after having had such a problem, we are addressing this issue with very forceful fashion that would generate a new image problem. So the country is experiencing its process how to rise in a way that would be viewed as respectful. In dealing with this historical problem or current problem in a decent, mutually respectable approach also remains a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you very much. Very eloquent. Professor Chu, do you have some comments on this? Why the people of China have this attitude toward the foreign ministry?
I think, as I mentioned at the earlier session, that we are now in China, we have different ideas and different opinions, and this is true. We have no consensus over almost everything. So the foreign policy is sometimes always been attacked by this or that kind of ideas and this or that kind of group of people. This is true, and this is reality in China. Foreign policy is not only sometimes the Ministry of Foreign Policy, Foreign Ministry, sometimes attacked by not being very much active. And the policies are not very much nuanced, and sometimes they are attacked by some people that the foreign policy is too soft. So we have different kinds of criticism dealing with the foreign policy issue. I want to say from a very broad perspective that we have to acknowledge that the world is changing and diplomacy is changing too, especially the conduct of diplomacy is changing too. I should say that the importance of diplomacy is increasing in today's world because of the power shift, because of the power diffusion, because of the interdependence of the world. So it's very difficult nowadays to conduct a diplomacy in today's world. And I should say that diplomacy is very much constrained by the empowerment of individuals. Look at today's world, that the people can get access to the internet to express their ideas. They have different opinions. Some of them are very extreme when they are talking about the diplomacy issue. So this is a normal thing. And when I'm talking about this constraintness of diplomacy, I'm concerning that Sino-Japanese relations over maritime dispute, especially this Diaoyu Island, sometimes the government cannot do more, especially when they are negotiating with the counterparts, because of the feelings of the people, because of the criticize of the people. This is we have to deal with. This is new problems that we have to deal with.
Mm-hmm. And General Chu, I don't know if you have an opinion on this particular issue, but I'd welcome it if you did.
Yeah, first of all, I believe some of the criticisms are reasonable, but some are not. Secondly, I think many reasons have led to the criticism against the foreign policy, again, on the so-called softness and etc. One is the fact that the rivalry between different government agencies, because different agencies representing different interests of different groups of people. I don't think I have to specify it because the situation is same in the United States. Second is the fact that even though decision-making process is becoming increasingly democratic, but decision-making process is not very democratic, is not democratic enough. Therefore, many people do not know the process of decision-making, and they do not know the reasons why Chinese government will have to practice this sort of foreign policy. Or that is to say, it's not transparent enough to the ordinary people. Thirdly, because of development of the nationalism in China. I think on some of the issues, the nationalism has reached its peak in history. For example, on the Diaoyu Island and the Huanyang Island, many of the netizens advocate the military confrontation or to take military measures to solve this sort of issues. the foreign ministry, of course, will be against this sort of argument, and therefore they are criticized by the netizens. Lastly, I believe that the statesmen, the spokesmen of the government, of the foreign ministry, always say diplomatic language. They don't speak like us. We have our own expressions, our own ideas. So that's not very popular among the Chinese. They always say, for example, Diaoyu Island has ever been the territory of China in history. But you don't have they did not do the specific job to prove this. That's the problem. Like Huanyang Island, that's the same. Actually, if you look at the international laws, there are a lot of principles which can be applied to China's claim over the sovereignty over Huanyang Island. But the government the spokesman of the foreign ministry just says one word. It is history in history. So this sort of argument, Chinese people always hear this sort of argument. And sometimes they say the Philippines will have to be responsible for any consequences, etc. But actually there is no following up actions taken by the government. So on this sort of expressions, the Chinese people, the netizens in particular, especially those irrational netizens, are very much against this sort of expressions. So they would like to hear strong or tough expressions over these issues. Therefore, they say the foreign ministry is too soft. And some even have more serious criticism over the foreign ministry. So that's all the reasons. Maybe there are still other reasons to justify this sort of criticism over the foreign ministry and the foreign policies.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Professor, please.
I don't think that China's nationalism is reaching its peak. In today's China, yes, we do have some people to express their national feelings when we have some disputes over maritime islands, and also some kinds of events, like something happened in 1999 about NATO bombing Chinese embassy, or such kind of these issues that a lot of people go to street to protest or something. But this is a kind of expression of their feelings. I don't think this is a kind of nationalism. I think nowadays in China we have a mixed picture of nationalism as well as internationalism as well as globalism. So we have different opinions and different ideas, different isms, I should say. And for majority, some people with nationalism or with national feelings, their voice is very much loudly. They like to go to the CCTV Channel 4, like some majors, colonels, to speak out, to say that we have to fight or something. I don't think, as General Zhu said, that this is a minority views. For most of the Chinese people, especially majority of silent peoples, they would like to see more cooperation with other countries, especially with the United States. If you ask them what do you want, the first wish that they hope that their children will be sent to the United States to study.
Well, thank you very much. I had a long list of questions, and we obviously don't have time to get to them. This conversation has been very rich. I want to remind our speakers that you'll have an opportunity to make sure that if we haven't covered issues that you felt we should cover, you'll be able to talk about that at the end of the day today. So obviously we haven't given you enough chance to talk about the various things that you need to talk about, but we do have to stop now because we have to move to our luncheon. But I do have a couple of announcements. First, take out the pink slip if you're, and make sure you fill it out. This is the do you like the meeting or don't you type of form. So please, the sponsors very much want to know that. Secondly, if you haven't bought a book yet and you want to, please do so. They're outside. If I'm saying that correctly? Yes, please do so. I guess we don't want to lug the books back to the Sigur Center. I'm not sure what the reason is, but no, we want you to see the wisdom in the volume. And third, this is a little precise, and so I have to read this. Okay, so some of you all have your tag, and some of you, like me, have a little blue dot on it. Okay, so and some of you don't. Okay, so it's nothing personal, but if you have a blue sticker and you are seated in the auditorium, then you are invited to have lunch in the 6th floor dining room. If you do not have a blue sticker, you will need to avail yourself to the extensive food court in the basement of the Reagan building or find other lunch options. And please come back when we resume, and we're scheduled to resume at 2 o'clock in this room. Now, for the sake, just a minute, this is one point here. For the sake of orderliness and safety, the ushers will invite audience members, row by row, to leave the auditorium for lunch. So the ushers, I guess, I'm not sure I see the ushers. There they are. Okay, the ushers are here. And the first row is invited to leave first, and they're invited to leave. First row, pay attention. You're invited to leave now, okay? Everybody got that down? Okay, but I think I've done all the announcements, and please join me in thanking our group for this wonderful panel.